Hello, my name is Daniel Yuck. Thank you for watching today. I appreciate you, your time, and your support. In today's video, I want to share with you how we can go about shading without any sort of reference or lighting involved. By the end of this video, you will have a grasp as to the theory, ideology, and the approach that I take to apply shading when there is no reference or lighting available to me. By the end of this video, I aim to provide you with enough tips and tricks that you can take with you to immediately apply on your end to start seeing immediate results. Should you have any questions at all, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment down below. I will do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. I do also have social medias under the same name as my YouTube channel. I have Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, all under Daniel Yuck. I would appreciate the support over there as well. With that being said, let's get right on into this. First and foremost, when it comes to shading, there are a couple of very important variables that we need. We need to have our technical application correct to provide us with smooth shading, and we also have to understand that shading is essentially layering. Now, when it comes to shading placements, that is kind of subjective and often guided by references. However, this video specific is going to be tailored more towards beginners who aren't yet able to accurately read references and who are kind of still working on even the technical application aspect. I want to try to sum down shading and make it as easy as possible for you to understand. Well, I mean shading without lighting or references. You can see right here that I have a more of a realistic rose, and oftentimes when we're doing roses like this, we're definitely going to need and want a reference. However, I want to kind of demonstrate and share with you all real time here how I can go about applying shading to this rose without any of that information available. I'm going to be using this sheet of Reelskin Fake Skin. This is Spirit stencil paper to apply this design. If you're interested in watching how I created these color blends, that video is available on my YouTube channel. Just navigate on over to the video section, type in color blend, and you'll see this video with this leaf on the thumbnail pop right on up. This Hitmonlee was actually done on my Patreon in a step-by-step follow along. So if you're interested in making this one happen, go ahead and head on over to my Patreon, where you can go ahead and follow along with me to complete full tattoo sessions in a 4K step-by-step format. I will also be using the Emalla Grand for this demonstration, and I'm probably going to run at around the 3.9 stroke and maybe at around 5 volts. I'm also going to be using an OG Produce standard 3-round liner so that way I can be real accurate with my application, along with Mummy ink. This is going to be the Mummy ink pre-made Greywash Set. That is what I'm going to be using. The pre-made Greywash has 20, 40, 60, 80, and full saturated black. I will also be using some Ink Ease ointment to clean up my fake skin along the way, along with some blue Scotch shop wipes to keep my canvas clean. I will leave my Amazon affiliate links and other affiliate links for you in the description below so you can check out the gear featured in this video on your end. When it comes to shading without like any sort of lighting or referencing, I want to make the process as simple as I can possibly make it. So what that means is I kind of want to start typically where I always start on a design from the bottom, and then I work my way on up. However, when I start, there's always a specific thought process. When I apply the shading, I want to be meticulous with where I apply it. So for example, let's say if I start right here in this area, I'm going to apply shading coming out this way right here. And that way the darker edge sits right on this line right here, with the shade coming out this way with a nice smooth transition. And then I can kind of repeat that, adding shading going this way all the way across, as well as this side as well. That may be a little bit hard to understand, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you here real time, so that way I can explain while I'm demonstrating real time. I'm going to begin with applying a very, very thin layer of ointment across the area that I'm going to be tattooing. And then I'm going to identify which petal I want to start shading. I feel like this is a great place to begin. I'm going to be using, again, the OG Produce 3-round liner so that way I can be real accurate with my deposits. I have the Emalla Grand, sets at 3.9 stroke, running at 5 volts, as you can see, even. I'm going to start with the 20% Mummy Greywash. So where I'm going to begin is I'm going to establish the darkest point, and then the darkest point is where I'm going to whip from, and then where I'm whipping towards is going to go on to the lighter area. So starting at the darkest to the lightest. So for example, let's say if I wanted to and I started like right here, as I mentioned a little while ago, what I would do is I would have the 20% and I'm just going to do a little kind of line like this. I'm not going to do like any hard lining or anything like that, as I want this rose to read a little bit more on the realistic end. So what I want to do is stay away from any sort of hard lining. Now I know that may look like a hard line, but it's not in the macro of what I'm going to do. So that area is and this is the 20% here. That is the darkest point, that area that I just applied. And then from here, I'm going to begin to apply shading in the form of the petal. So you're going to see all the way throughout this area right here, coming around over here, down this way, over to this way. That's now the darkest point. So my shading is now going to sit with the darkest point on the top, and then I'm going to work my way on out this way. Allow me to continue here. And then what I'm doing is I'm paying close attention to the actual petals here at hand. So I kind of anticipate the flow of petal going this way. So every stroke that I'm making here, I'm anticipating essentially that flow of the petal, so that way I could apply those motions in my whips here. And I kind of feel like that alone greatly impacts the read as well. So once I start adding a series of good choices here, we can kind of predict a good tattoo. And then if this seems a little bit choppy for me, I'm going to go ahead and just go back and forth very, very lightly. And this dark area is going to come all the way up to here. Like so. So on this entire line right here, there's going to be shading coming off of it, coming this way, in whatever form the petals are flowing in, as you can see. You want to match your hand speed to your voltage. Make sure that that technical application is correct. And also we have to be mindful of the spacing in between each line that we're applying. The spacing is also everything, I feel. So you can see that the darkest area is sitting up top, and then we're going to repeat that going around this way here. Let's go ahead and wipe away the ink and see what we are working with there. And I'm going to continue. Still working with the 20%. So just trying to follow the flow here and the motions of this petal. And if you need to smooth things out, it's kind of just using like pendulum back and forth motions. Very, very light amount of pressure. Now the thing is, notice how I am not coming up to this line over here. All I'm doing is I'm applying shading, going about maybe 60 to 70% into the petal here. So allow me to kind of just connect this area so I can explain the next important point, and hopefully here in a moment this can start making a little bit more sense. So right now you can see that all I've done is essentially establish the darkest point on where I want that to be, and then I've applied a layer of shading to the best of my ability to get the smoothest results that I can get. And then from here I'm going to work this petal until I feel like I'm at a good spot, and then I'm going to go ahead and continue. And then when we continue, we're going to see that once we start adding shading in this sort of manner, and keep in mind I have no reference, I'm not thinking about any sort of lighting, I'm just simply applying shading how I see fit, so to speak, in a manner that I feel would practically make sense. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue following the flow. Keep in mind, this approach has nothing to do with lighting, so there really is no technical sense of like shading placement or anything. However, I feel like with a sort of practical approach, we can still get a clean read on our roses. Okay, so that's great right there. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe away. I always wanna make sure that I'm wiping away often so that way I can really see what I am working with. From here, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to explain the next point. So this area all around the area that I just applied. So for example, right here, all going this way, over here, right here, all of this going all the way across is now going to be the new boundaries. You kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm going to establish these boundaries here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to start bringing these out following the same curves of these new petals. And then we're kind of going to repeat that process literally throughout the entire rows to apply the shading. So basically the darkest point is going to sit at the top as much as we can get it throughout the entire rows. Now if there's any other places where the shading is going to sit somewhere else, then I'll go ahead and do the best that I can to explain why there. But you can see now we have this area right here. And we're keeping in mind we're not coming all the way to the top. All we're doing is just kind of bringing it halfway, still working at 20%. And then that's going to be done all the way around. So from here, over here, all this new area right here. So you can see no hard lining at all. All of that area on this way is going to now have whip motions. So you can kind of anticipate however you feel the petals flow. That is going to be 110% up to you. So you can see here. All the way through. And then I'm just essentially starting to build up my kind of like gradients and layers on how I want them and how I see them. But you can see now the fact that I, for example, established this darker area, I left this area open. Now I went on to the petals down here, and you can see this is now the new darkest area. Once we start doing this throughout the entire petal, we're going to get a nice clean read. I really feel like it's the technical application. How smooth our shading is really what's going to determine the quality of the read. So for example, I want to bring shading this way. So you can see I established the darkest point there. And then I'm just bringing shading on out this way. Always making sure that my hand speed and voltage are matched as close as I can get them. There we go. And then essentially this is an ideology, I guess, a thought process. This is the theory that I'm going to use throughout this entire rows here. I can kind of touch base on that a little bit more and kind of map it out here with you, and then we can add the shading. I think that would be a cool way to approach it. So anywhere that I add a line is essentially where the darkest points are going to be. So with that theory, for example, then I would add a line right here, as you can see. So everything below that line is going to go shaded down. Everything below this line right here is going to go shaded as well. So keep in mind when I say go shade the darkest point and it goes shaded down, I mean just like that. So the darkest point, and then we're going to use that darkest point to create whip motions off of to apply the shading, like so. And then what we are going to do is once we start establishing all of these areas, we can go ahead and start using the 40, 60, 80 to go ahead and start adding depth and dimension there to kind of differentiate these areas right here. So for example, these areas and these tighter areas, they're going to go darker, and we're going to use like maybe a 60 or 80% later on. But right now, all we're doing is mapping things out. So from here, I can continue. So like for example, everything going this way of the line is going to go shaded there, as you can see. And then the same thing over here. You kind of want to start just mapping things out. You always want to know where you're going to shade and how you're going to shade it. That's going to be a part of that. Whip motions on up that way. So basically this is the darkest point, and on these right here, what we're going to do is create whip motions, as you see, going up this way on off of this line. And we're still not covering like the entire rose petal, because there's still one little trick that we can use to make things more interesting. It is a little bit on the advanced end, however, it's still cool to see. I'll still go ahead and relay that here in this video. But you can see though that I'm applying shading where it practically makes sense. If you're wondering why I decided to go shading up in this area, is because that's kind of the natural curvature of the petal. Another reason is because this petal out here as well is also going to go with a shading following the curvature of this petal. So you get the idea. All of this right here, the shading is going to go this way. So you can kind of see that we're using the neighboring petals to work off one another to apply shading. There is no reference, there is no like specific source of lighting. I'm just simply trying to make practical choices that kind of make sense towards one another. Now, from here, that approach would be applied all throughout this design. So for example, right here, this inner area right here, inner side right here, it's going to come this way like this, and then I feel everything below this line coming down this way is going to go with the whip motions, and you can see how I switch and I follow the curvature of this specific petal. Let's go ahead and always wipe away and see what we're working with here. Now, I'm not going for necessarily smooth. All I'm trying to do is make my points and map out this rose right here, and then I can go back and start smooth things out. Let's go ahead and continue. Please note that I'm still using just the 20% gray wash from Mummy. I'm not using any other gray wash system as of yet. And then the same thing over here on the outer edge. So this is gonna go darker right here. And then the shading is going to go this way. And you can see the petal kind of flows that way, which is why the shading is being whipped in that direction. And if I wanted to smooth things out, we could just go over with some cross hatching like so. But we're not trying to smooth things out right now. All we're doing is basically establishing certain boundaries and kind of mapping out the shading here. And I'm going to do that all the way through with the 20%. Up here as well, but to keep in mind, this is going to go shaded. So everything above this line going that way is going to go shaded. You can kind of get the idea with this one. This rose as well is also available in a stencil pack that I do have available on my website. And then over here, same thing. So shading moving in that direction there. Still just mapping it out. We're not going for any like sort of quality or smoothness right now. Please keep that in mind. And then over here on these inner areas, for example, same thing. And you can see that I'm following the flow of these petals here. And then over here as well. And then you can shade this way. So you can see following the flow of the petal still, and that area is going to go darker. And you really want to be mindful. You don't really want to come out too much if you don't need to. You don't want to go too far if it's not necessary. Just be mindful with your placements and how far you choose to go out into the petal. And then the same thing right here. Just going to create this shading. It goes into this one over here using a series of whip motions like so. And you can kind of get the idea here. Now, I know that because of the shading, this may not seem like the highest quality rose, but you can see that we are mapping this rose out with no reference and no lighting here. It's just simple technique and kind of choice making here. And then everything above this line right here is also going to go shaded all the way around. All of that's going to go shaded up. Little area is going to go shaded. As you can see right here's another one. This one goes shaded down. And you really don't want to do this too fast. You want to take your time, make sure that you're really mapping out this rose to the best of your ability, or any design really, because this kind of like rule of thumb can be applied to essentially any design. So here we are right here. You can see that if I just simply add shading right here. Here's another one. Anywhere there's a line, there's going to be shading coming off that line. That's basically the rule of thumb. There we go. And then right here, here's another line. So we can kind of ghost line the entire way. Here's the middle. You can see. Here's another line. We may not get every detail, as I don't want to get too crowded here. So basically everywhere that there is a line, shading is now going to come off of that line. So I essentially have this entire center part mapped out. All that's left are these outer areas of the petals. It's important to note that shading does take layers to get nice and smooth. All we're doing right now is just creating the foundation and kind of just mapping out the shading, kind of just explaining the logic behind shading with no lighting or reference. So please don't judge this technical application too harshly. For those who are wondering if there's a way to close off these petals up here, there definitely is a way. And you're gonna see that it's almost identical to what we've been doing. It's just a little bit different in terms of placement. So for example, let's say this petal down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to establish the darkest area, which is going to be right here, and then I'm going to repeat that all the way around. And these darkest points are going to act as the connection and the connectors to make the petal one complete petal. And in these like pointed areas, I like to make it a little bit interesting as well by leaving a little slit there to kind of act as a little like source of light hitting it. Now over time, once you start doing roses, you will be able to kind of read things better, and you will be able to apply them better. So don't be too harsh with the process right now, just be patient with it, and you will find like your own little twists that you want to add to your floral designs that you do. So you can see though right here, I'm essentially mapping out this whole point, and all of this area is where the shading is going to come off of. So we're going to repeat that same thing like with over here, for example, and then the shading is just going to be all in this area over here. If you need to smooth it out, feel free to do so. I'm just going to use a little bit of cross hatching here, like so. And then over here, same thing. I can kind of leave another little slit open there, as you saw, and follow the curvature of the petal. And I feel like all of these little choices do kind of make up for not having proper lighting placement, I would say. I guess not proper, but all of these little choices, like following the flow of the petal and leaving these little slits, add more interest and kind of make it our own, I feel. Although it isn't like following proper lighting, I'm still getting a very nice read from my rose. So I feel like shading can definitely be applied when there's no like lighting involved. It really just depends on the technique that we're using and how we go about applying the shading. And then that would be repeated essentially throughout all around the petals. So and I'm still using 20. That's important to note that as well. Over here as well, you can see that in this area, I can do the same thing. In this, make sure I'm on frame. In this area right here, I can kind of identify where I want the slits to hit there and then begin applying the shading. Now, since I know that I want all of this area to shade off of, I can apply the shading first, or I can do the line and then apply, run the shading off of the line. It's really going to be to each their own. I'm not going to go far into the existing petal as I do want some of the space from the petal showing up. The idea is not to shade the entire petal. The idea is to add shading in meticulous places with a specific technique. That's kind of the ideology and idea behind this. So you can see, there we go. And then the same thing, I'm gonna get back more ink here, or dip back for more ink. I'm still using the 20% as I am still mapping out the entire design here. So essentially everything off of that line coming inwards here is going to go shaded, and that's how I'm going to close off all the petals and make the rose look complete. I haven't used any lines or anything like that. All I've used is a series of strokes, different tones, or I'm going to use different tones, and layers of shading. That's all I've done so far. I can kind of switch over to a time lapse here in a little bit, so that way you can kind of see this progress unfold. But that is the idea behind my shading application. And like even in these areas right here, I'm just going to be mindful. If I don't need as much shading, then I'm just going to be mindful of how long my shading strokes are. Just little practical choices every step of the way. And then right here, I'm going to leave a little bit of negative space as to not make it look flat. Like so. I could even come around here and kind of round about it like this, and there we go. And then from here, I'm going to apply the shading over here. And you really want to be patient, because when you're applying like even stipple shading, I really feel like any shading, when you're applying any sort of shading or tattoo, be patient with the process. Really give the time the needle needs to do its job, so that way you get clean results. Keep in mind, this is all just almost one layer. There's only certain parts that you can see that are kind of done. Like these are a lot more smoother than these areas, but because these have a little bit more work into them. So you can kind of see that it just takes a little bit of time. You gotta layer everything up. That is the ideology behind it. Let me switch on over to a time-lapse mode so you can kind of see this rose unfold real time. Not real time, but you can kind of see it unfold at a more quicker pace here. So here is the rose in its completed form. You can see all of the petals are now closed off on the outer edge, and every single line is essentially mapped out, excluding this little area that kind of got overlooked here. But you can see that this is just about the completed rose. All of this was done with 20%. So it could seem a little bit flat to some. It could seem a little bit, whatever the case may be. This is a good time to actually start using different tones. All the shading is now mapped out. From here, I can go into, like, for example, the 60 or the even 80%. And I can start kind of defining some areas that I want to be a little bit more darker. I think that when it comes to these darkest tones, that less is going to be more. So all I'm going to do is just some small motions using the 60, as you can see here. And then that's going to be repeated wherever you'd like. There really is no right or wrong. The idea, though, to use darker tint or darker tones at the end is to kind of add a little bit of dimension here and a little bit of variation in between some petals. So that's essentially where I am at now. And you're going to notice that every single area, so for example, this petal, all the shading is going this way. This petal, all the shading is going this way. This petal right here, all the shading is going this way. This petal right here, all the shading is going this way. So I can kind of do that all day with this here, you can see. So for example, with this petal right here, all the shading is going this way. With this petal right here, shading is right here. So every single petal has shading that's working with the neighboring petal. Now, I kind of feel if you're wanting to avoid a sort of flat look, then the shading would be brought out a little bit less. That is the ideology, though, about shading placement without a reference or lighting. There are practical choices that I am, in fact, making along the way that kind of help me determine where I'm going to be placing the shading, and those are those factors and variables that I consider, the ones that I've mentioned here throughout this video. So from here, it's just really about fine-tuning, adding some more dark in the right areas. I don't want to add too much, and I don't want to add too little. So it really is just about experimenting and fine-tuning it over time. I think that as long as the technical application remains correct and smooth, you should be getting clean, consistent results. Where you choose to put your darkest points is solely 110% up to you. I really don't feel like there's any right or wrong, especially when we are just learning and starting out. But that right there is how I go about shading without any sort of reference or lighting. I feel like this is a great way to go about practicing shading and just adding shading to any design that we want. Also, I feel like this is a great way to simplify shading as well. So having this sort of simplistic approach, I feel, was a lot easier for me to grasp the concept of the technical application. Then I was able to practice my technical application. Once I developed my technical application and got really familiar with that, I went off to develop shading placement more, which is going to be an ongoing process for me, but you get the idea. So I took stepping stones to shading. If you're wanting to practice your shading technique and better that, I do also have tattooing workbooks that's available that you can check out on my Amazon author page. I'll leave those in a pinned comment section. Or I'll leave those in a pinned comment in the comments section, forgive me. I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of cleaning up here, and I feel like that will be it for this video. So you can kind of see I'm just kind of fine tuning all of these areas. And that right there is how I go about applying shading when I don't have any sort of reference or lighting. Here is the rose in its completed form. You can see that I was able to add shading all throughout this entire design, including the surrounding petals right here. They are all closed off. There's no spaces that are open. It does read as one complete rose. You can see that if we take a closer look, every single petal is working with each other to create one whole image. So for example, this petal right here, you can see that in this area right here, we have the darkest coming off this way, and this area of the petal closing off going that way. And then we have the neighboring petal, which is right here, with negative skin showing, which is causing separation. Coming up this way to these petals, it's darker, and the same thing is happening all throughout. You can see on this petal right here, it's darkest around this area. There's negative skin showing all throughout right here. And then it's working in conjunction with this petal right here because we have negative skin showing right here and then the darkest point right here. This sort of pattern is going to repeat throughout the entire rose, including even in these tighter areas. For example, you can see that the darkest points right here and the lightest skin tones right here. Same thing with over here, over here, over here, over here, right here. Here's the darkest area with negative skin tone. Even in the middle, this little dot right there has skin tone showing through. For those who think this rose may appear a little flat, there are a couple of ways that we can go about counteracting that sort of read. Now, we can go ahead and add, let's say 60 and 80% in certain areas to create a little bit of depth. Also, within our strokes, for example, we could have shortened them so that way we left more skin tone showing. So right here, for example, in this area, I could have brought the strokes out to like right around here, leaving all of this skin showing, and all of these surrounding areas, for example, right here, I could have brought the strokes out shorter, leaving more natural skin, creating a little bit of more depth and dimension. So off the bat, those are two ways that we can go about counteracting that sort of flat read. All in all though, this is how we can go about tattooing without any reference or lighting. That'll be it for this video. Should you have any questions at all, I encourage you to drop a comment down below, and I'm going to do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and ring that bell for me, as I'm going to be bringing more videos like this for you all. I do also have social medias under the same name as this YouTube channel. I have Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, all under Daniel Yuck. I would appreciate the support over there as well. With that being said, I appreciate your time and I thank you for watching. You have a great day. Are you wanting to develop your tattooing skill sets? Now you can practice and develop anytime, any place with an assortment of tattooing workbooks that I've created. With these assorted tattooing workbooks, we can practice our basic lining all the way to advanced lining. We can practice shading, shading placement, dot work, textures, and more. All we are going to need is a tattoo workbook of mine. We can use a pencil, pen. We can even use a tattoo machine with a ballpoint cartridge to develop our tattooing abilities further. That means that we don't need tattoo ink, we don't need napkins or petroleum jelly to get to practicing. Simply open one of my tattooing workbooks and get going. It really is that easy. You can get your hands on one of my developmental tattooing assorted workbooks by simply clicking the links in my description or in the pinned comment section below, or navigating on over to Amazon.com, typing in Daniel Yuck, and you'll see all of the assorted tattoo workbooks that I've created come up. If you have an Amazon account, be sure to follow my Amazon author page as well, as I would greatly appreciate your support. Should you have any questions at all, drop them in the comment section down below. I will do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. With that being said, let's get right back into this video. Are you needing or wanting tattoo guidance? What about 4K high quality step-by-step follow along tattoo sessions? Or maybe one-on-one tattoo support to get answers to your questions that are specifically tailored to your wants and needs as the artist? You can now become a Patreon, where you will gain access to high quality 4K exclusive step-by-step follow along tattoo sessions. I will be tattooing with you in a one-on-one step-by-step manner, where I will be explaining what I am doing and why every
step of the way. I will also be doing this in a high quality 4K format for your optimal viewing experience. On top of the one-on-one support and on top of the step-by-step tattoo session guidance, you will also gain access to exclusive tattoo stencils that you can download and place on your end to further develop your skill sets. I will leave a link for you in the description or in the pinned comment section below, or you can head on over to patreon.com/DanielYuck. When you become a Patreon, you will be getting one-on-one support where you can ask me as many questions as you'd like that are specifically tailored to your wants and needs as the artist. You will gain access to exclusive tattoo stencils that you can download and practice on your end. You'll also gain access to exclusive high quality 4K footage where I walk you through each and every tattoo session in a one-on-one step-by-step manner where I explain all the whats and whys along the way. Become a Patreon today. Thank you for your support in advance. I greatly appreciate you.